And the human side too. See, that's one thing that
Yeah.
nobody's really talking about, the human psyche changes that are going to arrive at the same time, these energetic changes sweeping through the solar system here. I mean, that is the wildest card, X22, X1000 factor that nobody even wants to discuss. Magnetic field changes and how the brain is going to perceive reality, because the magnetic hemispheres of your brain are going to change right along with that weakening magnetic field. Hyperinflation, 11 million job openings, and an energy crisis. Sound familiar? It's like Jimmy Carter in the 1970s all over again. Americans are paying twice as much at the gas pump and the grocery store. The Democrats control all three branches of government, and there's just a couple of questions you need to ask yourself. Do you think you'd be better off in 2022 than you have been in 2021? And do you think the stock market will trade higher the next 3 years than it did from 2016 to 2020? If the answer is no, learn how simple it is to add physical gold and silver to your portfolio ahead of the rise in inflation and predicted price rises. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver. Call 1-800-356-4470 and get a free investor guide today. And with the knowledge that Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer from 2016 to present, click on the link in the description box below for more information. And now on with the video. And good afternoon, everyone. I had so much positive feedback. Dan Schultz, moving into the positivity with the changes and offering solutions, discussing some of the problems and things that we're facing. And there's been such an uptick, even in the last 6 months since we went around our last interview here. And these are the things that are setting up as we look right now. So as we progress into that magnetic field you're talking about with the gas giants lining up in earnest, the Earth will be 100% locked in that through the middle of 2025, starting Q1 of next year. So no later than March. It depends. It's a few days here, a few days there. You determine on where your line is, where Jupiter swings past the Earth. Where they're both moving. One's moving faster than the other, so they're playing this little catch-up game until the Earth gets fully into that field. And from that point forward, the vast change that we're seeing with atmospheric disturbance, magnetosphere declines in this fashion, where who knows if it's going to go from 60 to 20 in a year. You just don't know. Is it going to progress even further into some other declines? And you're looking at where the magnetic field positions the north-south polar, jumping around everywhere, and Ben's mapped it out pretty much where he thinks it might connect somewhere around Indonesia, west of Indonesia, above the equator there. I mean, how fast can all this onset, and how is it going to affect the human psyche? See, this resonance field's changing. You mentioned Taurus there. And astronomy and astrology used to be the same science, and they were dissected about 250 years ago. They were separated. But astronomy shows you the science behind where the planets are lying in their orbits, where our star is in terms of its orbit and then where we sit in the spiral arm of the galaxy. But the astrology explains the energetic frequency that this system passes through on a regular basis in a cycle. So for every 2,000 years, approximately 2,100, each one of these cycle sets is a different energy frequency. It's going to vibrate at either a lower density or a higher density. Faster vibration, things are going to move faster. They're going to be more light vibration, if you will. So the astrology explains the vibration pattern we're going to go through. And where we're going into Aquarius right now, things are going to be moving way faster. Magnetosphere is declining. Our brains are waking up and actuating in different ways that hadn't been seen at least in a couple of thousands of years. So the top-down approach of how to control a civilization, everybody's seeing through it because the vibratory patterns don't match anymore. They're stuck back in some kind of iron thing that's trying to, really control humanity's soul at the deepest levels versus freedom. And now, irregardless of what these systems are trying to control us as, there's other external forces that are awakening the human psyche. And I really think that's the reason that this divide and conquer has come into the family unit.
You talk about this awakening that's happening. Going back to your scenario where the guy clipped the branch and there was a usable leaves on there. I still argue that if one of your guests or your woofers or a visitor takes back the leaves and steeps them and makes a tea, it is such an empowering event. You may have noticed this when you teach people things like this, that that is a wild, crazy idea for them, to take a branch, to take the leaves and use it in some way. They have never done anything like that in their life. 99.99% of Americans have never done anything like that in their entire life. It is that little act of using nature, one way of putting it, connecting with nature, benefiting from nature, is a really connecting idea. And that little event where they go home and steep the leaves, we do that sometimes with madrone berries or madrone bark. In fact, you can make a nice tea. And someone will do it, and it's so enlivening for them. And that's my point, is that it's fun to connect. It's empowering. It's inspiring. There's some awakening that happens when people, bit by bit, they might learn that little bit of technology, how to use that branch that he cut down. They might learn how to distill alcohol. Maybe it's some other, whatever it is. When we embrace this sustainable living, it ends up being deep, and it ends up being extremely satisfying.
Yeah, and especially if you take somebody around and let them pick something from the field as well. I threw a few seeds last year, these wild mustard or mustard greens that came up, and picking it. Oh, can you help go pick some mustard greens? We'll throw it into the salad, and it's the same thing once it's added to a salad, and that can actually taste, and like, wow, that tastes very different. Just all the lettuces that are still growing here is, man, we got an enormous amount of lettuce, green onions. The basil got killed in the frost, but there's kale, cabbage, kohlrabi, and like the mustard, all that kind of cooler weather greens are all still in flourishing amounts here, and the lettuces too. So there's a lot of still things you can pick even in the winter that
being supported by a plant.
Yeah, it's not like winter you can't grow a thing, and that's what most people's misnomer is. Oh, it's winter, there's nothing, we got to go back to the supermarkets. But there's still an enormous amount of micronutrient and dense greens that will keep the roughage coming through also, and keep that immune system a little bit more bumped up than it would be if you were without those greens through the winter time.
Yeah, and especially you and I were talking pre-show about fertilizers.
Oh yeah, I wanted to go back to that. Yeah, please.
But there's also a magic. Not only can you eat from the plant that's right in front of you, you're literally, it's not coming from nowhere. It's not from Paraguay or Chile or Madagascar, where who knows what happened to it in a way when you know that plant. But something even deeper, we were talking about fertilizer. We use, I'll send you that article from National Geographic, a study that they produced with urine and ash. But when you burn wood in your stove and you save the ash and you save your urine, you've got to dilute it. And you use one of my books that I recommend everybody read is the Human Manure Handbook. How to compost your human manure, your feces. And there's another level of magic when you take what is your body, you compost it, you take the wood and you burn it, and something that comes out of your body, you're borrowing this water, the urine comes out, and you actually fertilize plants. Because as you said, fertilizers becoming more scarce. In years to come, there will not be fertilizer. We need to learn how to do this. But when you take urine and ash and feces, you compost all this, you make your own soil, and part of it comes from your body. And now that plant that you're eating, you're a part of it. It's super deep. there's I mean, you might intellectually know, oh, the cycle of life and it's all a part of us, but it's very different from actually planting the apple tree, peeing around the apple tree, composting, what goes inside of you, wood ash, you create these fertile soils, and then it grows and you eat the apple and it keeps on coming back. You are connected.
Yeah, having these solutions for, I was just looking out at the orchard here, the window, because this soil builder used to be about, I don't know, $16 a ton down at the local farm store here. Now it's 24. I think they said they were going to raise it up, probably 25, 26 by the end of the year here. But it's just what you're talking about, decomposed and broken down wood and different kind of wood, leaves and all this. And it gets broken down into what I say, like silk fiber type of wood decomposition. And you just put around all the trees out there to keep the weeds from growing up, but also to keep the moisture in there, and then have breakdown and build that natural soil and that drip periphery line of where the fruit trees are. Now it takes a little bit to get in there and get it started and continue on, stay on top of it. But even having that skill set of using that soil builder to then fluff your garden to have a little bit more aerated soil, because we're living in a real heavy clay area here. So to have the skill set to even the fortitude, or even to think in the future of setting a 6x6 pit somewhere where you're throwing things that are already semi-decomposed. When you're going through the forest and cleaning, you're going to come across those logs that are already well into the way of decomposition, and being able to throw those in the pile. And then, I've seen these different raised bed techniques of putting logs at the very bottom also as the base layer that decompose. And, think about wood as a soil builder. In addition to the wood ash, because you're always going to have fires, and don't be afraid by CO2 because you have a campfire. So they've demonized CO2 so badly that even you as just a person on your own land to have a campfire or burning some brush that you cleared out is almost considered an offense these days because you're releasing CO2. So don't buy into that. You're not the company that has mega fleets of ships cruising across the ocean. You're not the one that has a 25 million square foot factory and these types of things. They blame it on us, the people, but it's almost inverted 180. The advertisement tells you to buy two because they're on sale, yet the same companies support the NGOs to go around and say CO2 is bad, but it's the same companies that are producing all this CO2, creating the new carbon offset credit market, personal carbon allocation market as a base asset for the new currency that's going to be unveiled here shortly. It's all been just a giant circle. People are seeing through it.
I don't know if you ever listened to Joel Salatin.
I do. Yeah. I was actually considered going up to see him.
Yeah. Virginia, right?
Yeah. He's about 3 hours from here.
Oh, nice.
Polyface Farms. And by the way, that book is just a dynamite book to have. I got 2 copies in case, we need to take one up to the field and leave one for building. Cause we're thinking about the blue hens now. So little tiny ones. Yeah. Smaller eggs, tiny. They eat a lot of insects. They're really easy to keep. They're quiet and they're small. So they're going to stay, I wouldn't say off the radar more than like a guinea fowl that's going to be banging around, making a ton of noise out front.
I love Joel Salatin. He really speaks to me. And one of the things he said that resonates is that all farmers are soil farmers. In the end, it all has to do with the soil. And so it's just one of those skills we need to learn. And I think, flush toilets never made any sense to me. I always said that, one of those abstractions, if you use a toilet and you flush it and you have no idea where it goes and you don't care, then, it's another example of the cycle of nutrients in life being an abstraction. It just goes off to an expensive sewage treatment plant, and it usually goes into a landfill, and it's terribly not only wasteful of a valuable resource, but, being an integral part of soil building and is just one of those connecting to the land events that happen year in and year out. Hugelkultur, using ash and urine, or human manure composting.
Let me stop you for a second. See, that was a purposeful move there. It's like 6 birds with 1 stone. First, you don't know where it goes, so you're unaware that that could be turned into a product first. So, and then you're into the, oh, we need to take more taxes because we need to build out the municipalities. We need to build out the treatment plants. Oh, there's always upgrades. And then again, the landfill and that whole thing. But then, oh, now you have to be relying on fertilizer and agrochemical companies instead of producing something locally. So think about how many facets have been removed of self-sustainability and more toward the systemic systems here that you have to be on the teat of the government. They're the only ones that can process the water. They're the only ones who can process the waste. They're the only ones who can give you fertilizer. They're the only ones that can transport it safely. They're the only ones that X, Y, Z. And just that little tiny one example of where your waste goes after the toilet. Think how many things have gotten out of sync right there and how much more dependence there is on systems from that bought for and taxes paid every time you buy from a corporation that is producing that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those empowerment, those holistic empowerment principles. When you learn you don't need the municipality or the fertilizer company that comes from China, and you can create your own fertilizer, it is empowering. And
so tell me about the yields. We talked yesterday a little bit about the yields. So ash and urine creating a fertilizer, because all numbers are leading. So just as a general, we're going to say 10%. It's not exact. 10% decline in global availability of petrochemical fertilizers, NPK, like 1010, 19, whatever you want to do, straight up nitrogen, and then the phosphorus or the potash that they use to really make plants grow in those maturation phases. That is going to be lacking just globally 10% next year. And if you look out, industry leader, you want to check out CF Industries. They're one of the largest fertilizer producers here in the US. On record, publicly, CEO comes out and says, get ready for food shortages. We're not going to have enough fertilizer. So add in your yields, what you would think the declines would be on per acre, per hectare yield on this much fertilizer not coming in. So let's say every farmer, we're just going to do an average here. Every farmer in the world has 10% less fertilizer to work with. So some areas like yours are going to be just fine because the bioaccumulation in the soil, it's already been built up. It's a healthy soil. So even if there's nothing added, it could still draw down on that for, a couple of seasons until it's added back to. But you go out in the middle of the Midwest, like Nebraska, where they're doing 20,000 acres on a single farm with those massive tractors, combines, you see there's nothing in the soil except just dirt and then whatever they add to it to make plants grow. So the yield decline is not going to be just average across the board. There's going to be some areas that get better yield or sustained yield or maybe slight declines. But where they're heavily dependent on that, they're going to get massive declines. So a 10% reduction in fertilizer being used on a farm, how much do you think that will knock down per acre on the tonnage or on the bushels?
When you look at the coordinated attack, and for your audience, if you do not know it, if you do not understand this, there is so much information out there. We could talk for hours on it, that there is a coordinated attack on our worldwide agricultural system, from the decline in availability of fertilizers, which is a big deal, to they're paying farmers for their pig rights. So they can't ever farm pigs again. They're pouring out millions of gallons of milk. They're paying farmers not to farm, even to destroy their crops. There are some blatant attacks in a very diverse ways. You can't process it. You can't ship it. However you look at the entire system, there is an attack on our food system. And what it means is there's going to be shortages, and that food prices are going maybe this, but food prices are going up. And it's not a crazy idea. Look at history. They have controlled people with food for a long time. Ask the Soviets, ask the Chinese, then it's going to happen again.
And, people like you and myself, we're prepared, but at 100% load, nothing's ever 100. I mean, we're prepared enough for at least what we see coming at us for some time. If it's going to last for the rest of our lives, we're definitely all going to have to shift in ways that we hadn't thought before. But for the average person, when the food that they don't grow themselves, because they don't even know how to supplement a salad. So, you know, we were talking the other day about how much money we had saved by not buying produce during the entire summer. How much money that had really saved, eating fresh, huge, gigantic leafy salads every day. Sometimes we couldn't even finish the salad. I know it's a shame. It wilted, and if we didn't eat it in the morning for breakfast or something, it was kind of a loss, which hurt me a little bit. So we had to, you know, tweak in the size of the salad so it wasn't so much wastage. Even now, we can still supplement with the salads with what we canned up during the summer of all the squash. We got a fair few pumpkins and butternut squashes still fresh that's there. Canned tomatoes, green beans, all that stuff we saved. We dehydrated a bunch of things. Peppers, and we made our own sun-dried tomatoes, and we had an enormous amount of stuff we made ourselves from what we grew this year, and huge money saving. So the average person that's going to the supermarket every week to feed their families or whatnot, they're going to get priced out of the game at some point. You know, and how's that going to affect the stability of society where, you know, the water cooler talk's all about food prices, not the game, you know. That had previously been talked about. Oh, the Raiders did this. What did Browns do this weekend? You know, that was water cooler talk, maybe a little bit of politics, but mainly it was fun stuff. But now what if water cooler talk is 100% food pricing, availability of food, where you're going to get the food? And my whole thing is, you can see the narrative playing out. And I'm not trying to be negative here, but I'm just trying what you see, and then how can you game it out and then figure out your safest move through that. This smash and grab kind of organized thing going on in California is getting so much news, and you just wonder why they were targeting like these 5-star, the high-end handbag places. I mean, in the world we're living in, is there still a need for it? Yeah, sort of, but it doesn't have the luster and the appeal like you said before. It kind of lost that. You know, it really doesn't have that, oh, I got to get the next bag and everything. That is sort of drifted away a little bit. I'm not going to say 100%, but that whole world we used to live in has sort of drifted a bit. So for these gangs to go smashing, you know, 5-star rated store regions across to, you know, hit every hit, they're going to go to Hermes first because they got the best shoes, whatever. That is a narrative to say that guards need to be stationed in every single store. Now, my feeling is with the fertilizer, I wouldn't say shortages, but not full availability of fertilizer next year is going to make food prices skyrocket. In turn, the next smash and grab organized types of events you'll see will be targeted toward food distribution points, could be supermarkets, whatever it is, food's going to be involved in it. And then you're going to see the next play is they're going to station troops in there and limit your availability to it, because cycles of history say there won't be enough food for everybody. They'll have to determine who and how to distribute it. And then this is where we get into, wow, it is amazing that there's something on your phone that's green or red that allows you to go into a store at this very moment, following right in line with that. So it's going to be, 2022 is going to be the year of about food.
It's a steady march. It's
a steady march. And 23 will be the year about sky sightings of anomalies that are beyond description, of plasma and color. And, you know, John Casey, his first book, Cold Sun, had a blue tinged sun on it. So if you're looking at spectral changes, you know, I had a real good conversation with someone the other day. Maybe the sun is turning white because it's between colors. Because when I was a kid, it was yellow and orange. So if you go red, orange, yellow, blue, maybe we're in that point where it changes from that orangish yellow, and then it went white just before it's going to tinge into blue on the spectral. I'm not sure, but it seems like we might be between a color, because if you're going to shift between colors, there's going to have to be a middle point somewhere where that's just that tinge of neither before it flips to the next one. And maybe that's what that white sun that we're seeing now. And in short order, we'll see a green or a blue tinge to the sun, or our sky could turn more green, or something that is going to just shape the way that people really view their days and what's important around them at the moment. So 2023 could be perhaps the year of the moment, because nobody will be caring about the future. You'll be just concerned about this breath.
Yeah. One of my points of emphasis is is really believing our own experience, with the pandemic. Look around you. Look around. Look at your own experience. You look around you. Do you have a reason to be afraid? Only because of information, people are afraid. And if you look around you and know if you're over age 40, I think, the sun used to be yellow. The sun has turned white. We got to believe our own experience. And as we see changes in weather and climate and effects of light, of the sun, and of animals and animal patterns, as we see these changes, there are real signs. We need to believe our own experience.
And the human side too. See, that's one thing that
Yeah.
nobody's really talking about, the human psyche changes that are going to arrive at the same time, these energetic changes sweeping through the solar system here. I mean, that is the wildest card, X22, X1000 factor that nobody even wants to discuss. Magnetic field changes and how the brain is going to perceive reality, because the magnetic hemispheres of your brain are going to change right along with that weakening magnetic field.
Yeah, it's so just need to keep our eyes out. And yeah, people changes are a big deal. We can already see people changes. Anyways, Dave, thank you for the interview and the great conversation. I need to go take care of
some soil building time.
soil building, maybe.
All right, Dan Schultz. I'll leave the links in the description box below. So if you want to check out what they're doing with the project, get a hold of Dan yourself. And I do wish you the best in your preps. Things are changing fast. So tomorrow, hey, you know what? This afternoon is going to be a great day to do something new. Thanks for watching. See you next time. I need to go get the couple cords of wood for the wood burning stoves, because they're already anticipating power outages here coming up. If there's a lack of power in Virginia, they're going to reroute power from TVA, and they're going to start throwing us to rolling brownouts here. And they're going to reroute the power up to DC, Quantico, and whatever other podunk wannabe government place is going to try to pilfer electricity from those who have it. You're telling me that because Washington, D.C. didn't anticipate and they wanted to go green and put windmills offshore, that because they're not going to have enough power because the wind's not blowing, that they're going to steal our electricity off the hydro down here in Tennessee and send it up there?
Yeah.
What a bunch of scammers.
Yeah, wasn't it? But it's so blatant right now. You and I are up on this stuff, but it's still nearly unbelievable to me. Some of the absurdities and the blatant, from criminal to corrupt to just dumb, it's nearly unbelievable.
Yeah, and Iceland's rationing power because their hydro and geothermal isn't cranking. They're having sort of some issues with water flow into the dams because of one of the volcanoes. So now their hydro's not working, and they've taken offline all cryptocurrency mining operations, all smelting, and there was some other thing there that they were limiting. Yeah, they were hitting 3 industries in Iceland to cut power consumption because they just don't have the power. And they were the poster child of renewability with the geothermal and Tennessee is pretty well set. They got nuclear and hydro here. Same thing in Iceland. They had the geothermal and the hydro, but now the hydro's not working. So now they're in a conundrum too. Now, all these people pinning their hopes on having, free air conditioning by being in Iceland, so they don't have to run the mining farms at high temperature. There's not enough electricity now for the crypto mining farms and industry and smelting and a few other processes involving super heavy power intensity to continue running in Iceland. Yeah, they're cutting all those industries so people have power so they don't riot on the streets.
Mining crypto takes a lot of energy.
Oh, intensive. Yeah. Well, one of the most intensive mining parts is keeping the facility cool.
Yeah.
So that's why they chose Iceland, because it's always cold up there. Well, relatively. I mean, you get a couple months of summer, but relatively for the rest of the year, you do have zero input costs. They just channel cool air from outside to keep the facility cooled off. And then they're getting subsidies and nearly free power to run the rigs and get all that done. But now, since power is at a premium and not forthcoming for the average citizen because of all the low water levels, well, it's a conundrum. And it's in your face and everywhere. Everything's in your face right now. See, I think the Great Awakening, there's too much in everybody's faces that you're like, that's the opposite of what I learned. That's the opposite of what I was told. That's the opposite. That makes no sense. They're stealing from us there. Wait, ineptitude over here. The broken system continues to be a black hole for money over here. Wait a second. Why are we still putting money in that black hole over there? You know, it's so in your face on so many levels anymore that there is really an awakening happen because it's laid bare for all to see pretty much at the moment.
It is, if you got the eyes to see it.
Let's kick it in with the ears.